Hello and welcome. You're listening to The Long Take. My name is Justyn.
And this is Ken.
And, today we're going to be talking about Inherent Vice. I actually just got back from the theater for my second viewing. I saw it last month when it came out. So I'm ready to talk about this, ready to dive into it. Ken, you've seen it twice?
I too have. I saw it right when it came out, and I saw it again about a week and a half ago.
Cool.
So between the two of us, we've seen it 4 times. Spent what? I spent $15-$30. You spent.
I spent more than that because the first time that I went to see it at the Angelica in New York, and I was supposed to bring my sister and my girlfriend. The 3 of us were going to go, but it wound up just being the 2 of us. But again, I paid for it, so I think that was like $40-something because the Angelica is kind of expensive. And then I just saw this one, so I think I spent like $50 on this movie already.
So we spent nearly $100 on this movie.
Yeah,
so
we did our part.
We did our part. We definitely did our part for sure.
We're gonna talk about that a little bit because it's a movie that's not doing as well as we had hoped. We've been looking forward to this movie since we heard about it. And I mean, this goes back to like 2012 for you, right? Because even earlier, no?
Yeah, around 2011, 2010.
Yeah, when you first heard about The Master, there were also talks about...
That would be interesting to bring up, actually, because I'm interested in seeing how far back the very first Inherent Vice-related article came out, because, yeah, I remember after The Master came out, it took so long for that movie to finally come out to theaters. The first announcement for that movie was in late 2009, and the movie didn't come out until September 2012. So there was like, you talk about a long wait.
Yeah, nothing to do but wait and wait for this movie.
The Master just took forever to finally come out, and then but then because they started filming The Master in 2011, I think, the summer of 2011. Okay. So before Anna Perner, Megan Ellison came in she was going to fund both movies. She was going to fund both movies. And then Warner Brothers stepped in at some point after The Master came out. They stepped in and they decided to fund, put their production budgets towards Inherent Vice, which is kind of curious in itself, but yeah. So around, I want to say 2011, Paul Thomas Anderson fans who had been seeing how The Master was playing out, and keep in mind at the time, Jeremy Renner was going to be Freddie Quell.
Yeah, that was before Joaquin came in.
And then when Paul Thomas Anderson was writing Inherent Vice, there was rumors that Robert Downey Jr. was going to play, what's his name? Doc Sportello.
Larry Doc Sportello. Yep.
Yeah, so back then, just almost 3.5 years ago, these movies from the outset looked a lot different than how they actually turned out. So it's pretty interesting to see how the evolution of these movies, how they came out. But
and I remember thinking The Master was, I loved that movie, but I didn't think it was doing as well as I'd hoped, because it was a challenging movie to watch. PTA's movies aren't the easiest to swallow for like the average audience. So I was like, this movie's great, but this next movie, Inherent Vice, if it's Robert Downey Jr., he's a big name. Everybody knows him. He's Iron Man. He's going to get a lot of seats in the theater, and that'll be great. Because PTA's movies haven't been really making that much money, like compared to, say, a Quentin Tarantino or somebody like that. So yeah, and then I heard that then I saw The Master, or saw Joaquin's performance, and then I heard that Joaquin was going to be the one to instead of Robert Downey Jr. to be in this movie, and I was kind of bummed because again, Robert Downey Jr. is a movie star. He's a bigger name than Joaquin Phoenix. Even it's you can't really say who's more talented. We have our opinions. But then, the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, I'm glad that he and Joaquin have kind of formed this kind of a partnership, which is nice to see. He kind of does that. He has a tendency to do that with the actors that he uses in his films. So I was like, all right, I see what's going on here, and I think his performance was great. So good decision. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem is that Joaquin Phoenix, the last movie he's starred in that was a hit was his Oscar-nominated performance in Walk the Line as Johnny Cash. That movie made $100 million plus in the box office.
That was going back to like 2006, right?
In 2000, it came out in November 2005.
Yeah.
So that's almost 10 years ago now. And Two Lovers, The Master, Her, The Immigrant, and now Inherent Vice. Her is the most successful of those movies, and that just cracked $25 million in the box office. So you have to wonder just how popular Joaquin Phoenix is these days. Because it doesn't seem like he's that... I don't know. I love him. I love what he's done the past couple of years. But you gotta wonder if his name just isn't enough.
Yeah, it's as simple as this, like... You talk to somebody and you're like, oh yeah, this movie, it's got Joaquin Phoenix. And then you have to name some movies that he's been in. Whereas if you say, oh, the movie, it has Robert Downey Jr., people just know. People know who Robert Downey Jr. is. Everybody knows. He's been around forever, or, not forever, but, he's been making movies since the 80s. And, then he had that reemergence with the Iron Man movies, and he's just insanely popular. So... that's why I was thinking, this movie would be more successful. No doubt in my mind it'd be more successful if it was Robert Downey Jr. But I'm happy that it's Joaquin Phoenix as a fan of PTA and of movies.
Joaquin Phoenix, watching the movie twice, definitely was the right person for the role. Robert Downey Jr. would have had a totally different approach, I would think. He would have been...
It'd be a totally different movie.
Yeah, he would be... I don't think he would have been as hazy and drugged out. Even though he did plenty of drugs and probably knows exactly what it's like to, do all that, be on that stuff. Although I think Doc only did weed, right? So
yeah. I think Robert Downey Jr. seems more like coked out to me, like
he's a motor mouth.
Walls, whereas Joaquin Phoenix is like kind of laid back, a little lazy, kind of perfect for this stoner detective.
Right. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But I gotta say, I mean, it seems like you're right. Robert Downey Jr. probably would have been, financially speaking, probably would have been the best choice for the role. But you can't really be too upset. If you like Paul Thomas Anderson, if you like this movie, Joaquin Phoenix is a big factor in that. It's just, overall, I think people who really enjoy Paul Thomas Anderson's films get a little disheartened to see how poorly they do at the box office.
You root for the guy, You and I, we both like him a lot, and we want him to do well. When the Oscar nominations come out, we're like, oh, yeah, I hope, he's up there. And because not too many people know about him, we were talking about this with The Master before, where it's like, it's a movie that you feel personally affected by and attached to. And the fact that not too many people are aware of it makes you root for it that much harder. It's easy to root for, the New England Patriots. It's hard to root for the Browns, and then they finally start doing well, and then you're even that much more happy. Now it's like, oh, the Patriots are going to the Super Bowl again. Cool,
Right.
So that's the thing. Like, we're getting bogged down with being bummed out about the movie not doing as well, but. Let's talk about the movie. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right.
Because I think this is a movie that's going to go down and it's going to be remembered not for doing well at the box office, but people are going to be like, "Hey, do you want to come over and watch that weird movie Inherent Vice? It's this just really weird movie. Maybe we'll smoke a little weed or something. I don't know. It's going to be like a cult classic, kind of like Big Lebowski or something like that.
I hope so.
Me too.
My only issue is. Are there cult classics these days? In the last 5 years, the last 10 years? Because you think... I remember when Scott Pilgrim vs. the World came out. A lot of people thought that was going to be a cult classic. Is it now? I don't even know if it is. Because people are like, oh, maybe it won't hit the audiences now. But then they start touting it as a cult classic. But I wonder because There's
I know a lot of people that really like that movie. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
But what I'm saying is because there's no blockbuster, because people don't buy DVDs or Blu-rays as much as they used to. Unless, The Master's been on Netflix for a while, but has it really gained popularity? Not really. I don't feel like Netflix really. That's my problem with Netflix sometimes. I don't really think it bolsters movies that didn't really have attention before. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all just like this giant list, this massive titles, where it used to be like you walk into the store and like I'm kind of getting nostalgic about it now because I remember going to Blockbuster and like just walking around like, oh, I want to see that, I want to see that. But yeah, with Netflix, like there's so much right in front of you, it's hard to stand out.
So I hope it becomes a cult classic, but I just wonder if there is such a thing anymore.
There's always going to be cult classics, man.
No, you're probably right. But yeah, let's start from macro. Let's talk about overall impressions of the movie, and then we'll start outside and we'll start going closer to the bullseye. Like the meat of the.
Circle the drain before we got. Okay.
Otherwise, because once we get deep into this movie, we're not going to be able to find our way out. You know what I mean? So.
All right. Why don't you start? I don't know where to start. My head's still spinning from watching it.
I'll start, but just be aware of the Golden Fang as I talk about this movie.
You're supposed to beware. You're supposed to whisper.
Beware of the Golden Fang. Okay, so Inherent Vice, like as we said, it's tough with a movie like Inherent Vice because it is Paul Thomas Anderson. He was able to make this movie just 2 years after The Master, which is something I haven't really experienced from this filmmaker. I've been following him since the early 2000s. There Will Be Blood was the first movie I saw of his in theaters. So it was There Will Be Blood. It was 5 years till There Will Be Blood, 5 years till The Master, and then it was 2 years till Inherent Vice. There was excitement there. And so, with any filmmaker that you really love, that first viewing is always you're going to have a lot of thoughts in your head. And especially with something like a Thomas Pynchon novel that this movie is adapted from, there's going to be even more thoughts in your head. And I think the problem with a lot of audiences, and they don't realize that this is also the case with Big Lebowski and movies of that nature. With the stoner detective comedy, part of the joke is the excess information that's being spewed all over the place. Most of it is red herrings. Most of it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And generally speaking,
maybe all of it.
all of it doesn't matter. Yeah. And so what happens though is that you're watching it and you're trying to piece it together, even though you're not supposed to. For me, that was for me. I was like,
it's kind of frustrating, but challenging, like in a good way. Like it's fun to think about.
So, folks, listeners, I'm telling you, the second viewing, you don't have any of that because you already know it probably doesn't make any sense. So you're going into it with almost a fresh mind. You're not really thinking about the details too much, the plot details too much. And all of a sudden it becomes like this new experience because you're experiencing the film scene to scene. And it became a much funnier, sharper, rich movie than than even I expected, and I really love Paul Thomas Anderson. But after that first viewing, I knew I had to see it again. It wasn't the case. It's not the case where it's like, well, it's my favorite filmmaker. I have to see it 5 times in order to like it. No, it was just I was curious. I was like, there's something going on there because there was that first viewing for me. There were things in it that I really, really enjoyed, and I just needed to be able to see it again to really get a full picture of what I was seeing. And so that second viewing really helped clear the air for me in a lot of ways. The hazy, smoky air.
Yeah, it was similar for me because, like, we were talking about going back to, like, 2011. When you first told me about this movie, it was right before we saw The Master. And ever since then, I've been kind of obsessed with anything that he's done, Paul Thomas Anderson. I went back and watched some of his movies that I hadn't seen. And once I did all that, I was, starving for something more. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to read this book because I don't want to wait the years for this movie to come out. It wound up, I guess, taking 2 years. But so I read the book, and ever since then I've kind of been obsessed with just any steps in production, anything that's done, checking cigarettes and red vines every day, or maybe not every day, but I follow them on Facebook, so like I'll get notifications when something happens. But reading people's comments, like it's kind of crazy how insanely just addicted to news about this movie I'd gotten. But that just shows how excited I was. So the first time I watched it, with all that going in my mind, I was like, I've been building this up and building this up. I'm just going to try to turn off my brain for a little bit and just soak this in. Just watch it, not try to think about it, because like I already know the plot basically, which is kind of a bummer. Like in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have read the book, but lesson learned. But I but I do think
I told you.
What did you say when I was like? Did I tell you I was reading it, or that I already read it?
Well, you asked me if I was going to read it. I'm like, I had the book. And I read the first, with something like that, I'll read like the first 20 pages to get a sense of where it's going. But after that, I'm like, that's it. I have to wait, because otherwise it's going to be too uncanny of an experience for me trying to compare the book and the movie. But was that what happened with you?
It wasn't like, I wasn't upset that I spoiled it so much. I just like the idea of going into something like that, like, not knowing what's going to happen, just having it be a fresh, new experience. But having read the book before, it kind of allowed me to be a little more invested in that world that I saw on screen. And also because it's so true to the book, it's not like a lot of people hate on the Harry Potter movies. I'm just pulling an example, first thing that comes to my mind, because they leave so many things out. This movie leaves some things out, but the things that it holds on to, it doesn't change the plot all that much. Only where it needed to. So yeah, I watched it, and I kind of just tried to chill out in the theater and just soak it in. And then it allowed me to think about it. And the more I thought about it, it had been like a long time since I'd read the book, so a lot of the stuff I'd forgotten, which is cool. And then with the second viewing, I was able to really kind of just focus and pay attention to every little aspect and try to piece the plot together as best I could. So I think I'm in a good place right now to really dive in and nitpick and talk about everything. I think I actually discovered a mistake that he made. We could talk about that later if you want.
Paul Thomas Anderson made?
Yeah, isn't that weird? Because you wouldn't expect somebody who's so meticulous with his craft to screw up.
Well, I don't. Are you sure it's
I'm not sure.
Unintentional mistake?
It might not be. I mean, it's such a small thing that it could be a mistake, or maybe it couldn't. He was probably thinking, who's going to pick up on that? But it's the part where, and this is something you probably wouldn't pick up if you didn't read the book. But it's the part where he's looking at the whiteboard, or he's got a whiteboard with all the names,
Okay, yeah.
And connected to Coy, played by
Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson, thank you. Coy Harlingen, played by Owen Wilson. Attached to his name on the board, you have this character by the name of El Drano. And El Drano's not even in the movie. He's in the book, obviously. But he's introduced to Doc, or his name is mentioned to Doc for the first time in the next scene, where he's in the restaurant with Josh Brolin's character, Bigfoot Bjornson. He's the one who tells him about it. And so I was like, why would he have that on the board if he's just now... So I think it's just a small thing, but,
maybe it was a nod to the book. Maybe he intentionally... I don't know. You probably was a mistake. It was probably a mistake.
But the thing, I can't imagine he'd be like that worked up about it. Like if I in some weird universe talk to him, he'd be like, oh yeah, so what?
He's a pretty... Compared to him from like 15 years ago, he's a pretty relaxed dude now. I mean, I think having kids and all that kind of mellowed him out a lot.
Could you imagine him making this movie back then?
Oh my god, there would have been so many whip pans and long like tracking shots and all that stuff. Yeah. Oh my god, he would push in on one character, then the whip pan, and to the next scene. That was Magnolia. It's just, you should just call that movie Whip Pans galore, because he loved that back then. He loved like transitioning scenes by having the camera just turn really fast, and then you're in the next scene. So Yeah, but he doesn't do that anymore.
No, now he kind of just like the camera is kind of still, and he's just showing these these people do their thing. He's showing these actors act. These characters are.
Remember my note to you before?
What was that?
Because what I noticed the second time I'm watching this movie is that the scenes where he's with people on his level.
Oh, like authority figures versus people like in his
his world. People in his, with Owen Wilson or with
Shasta,
Belladonna,
Dinas.
The point. Did you notice that, by the way?
Yeah, of course. Did I notice that?
anyway,
I noticed that in the trailer.
I don't want to get sidetracked, but yeah, slower shots that kind of either push in or they stay still. Very like kind of like hazy, kind of, because it's just kind of like it's focused on one thing, like almost like it kind of lost where it was. You know what I mean? Just kind of when you start something for so long, it just becomes almost like nothing. That was that feel that was going on. I think
there's a really cool example of that when he's talking to Tariq Khalil, played by Michael K. Williams. There's a shot of Doc sitting to the left, and it's Tariq's in the center, and it just very, very, very slowly. You realize, this is a long take because they're talking for a long time, but it just very, very slowly zooms in.
Mm-hmm. But then when he's talking to Bigfoot Bjornsson, or when he's talking to the what's the one guy's name, played by Martin Donovan, his daughter.
Oh, Crocker Fenway.
Crocker Fenway. When he talks to Crocker Fenway and Bigfoot Bjornsson, those scenes
Adrian Prussia.
Yeah, Adrian Prussia. Those scenes are more traditionally shot. There's the standard one shots, and they're rarely not in the same scene together. You think about that big scene towards the end with Bigfoot and Doc, and they're not in the same shot together.
Yeah,
I think the only time they're in the same shot together is when Doc tries to move past Bigfoot by the car and tries to get around him, and Bigfoot winds up knocking him down and like just kneeing him.
When he's trying to run from the mansion, from Sloane's house, or Sloane and Mickey's house.
Mm-hmm.
There are other scenes together.
There's the one, there's a couple of them, but when they have dialogue, those scenes are typically shot more traditional, over the shoulder shots, cutting back and forth. But that's not the case with some of the that was pretty neat. I didn't really. That definitely is intentional. I would think, but that was pretty neat. Because also with his lawyer when they're at that restaurant, that was one shot, wasn't it? That was one take. That felt like
Sancho, where they're talking about. There's a lot of that back and forth camera stuff when he's talking to him.
Oh, was there? Oh, never mind.
They're going back and forth with. You can actually watch that scene. That's one of the scenes that got released. But yeah, you can go back and just see it again, I guess. But yeah, they go back and forth. Okay.
Maybe I was wrong with that one, but definitely the one, like the pizza party scene and like some of the other stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that's a cool one where he's just talking to Coy that whole time. The pizza party scene.
That's what I call it, right? That's what
I just imagine, like, you have a pizza party when you're a kid, and you have like your party at the bowling alley or something, and then you go to that weird room that places just have for kids pizza parties.
Yeah, there's a lot of pizza in Inherent Vice. Is there a lot in the book?
Oh, I noticed that in the when he's talking to Sortilege and Dinas after the title sequence. Like, it's them in a pizzeria, and there's fucking marshmallows on the pizza. Did you see that? Did you notice that?
Yeah.
I was like, are those marshmallows? That's crazy.
Marshmallows, I don't know. That's weird.
It's so funny. But anyway, not to get too bogged down on the pizza. Yeah, the pizza party. Yeah, that was a cool shit.
But no, there's a couple of... And there's towards the middle when Doc's partner... What's his partner's name?
His buddy Dinas?
Yeah, Dinas. When he's like, you want to come in with me?
Not Dennis, Dinas.
Dinas.
For some reason.
Hey, you want to come in with me? And he's like, actually, we'll think about getting to a slice of pizza. Like, just...
Yeah. Where they're outside the Golden Fang. He's like, I was thinking I'm going to go find a pizza somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, just... I love stuff like that. But, yeah, I definitely noticed the long takes versus the traditional shots in my second viewing. Because it just interesting... I think it just shows separation between, like, the hippie generation and the more authoritative, the people who are against that generation. I think there's definitely that going on there. So I think that's really interesting, and it kind of plays into what we talk about as we get into this. Is there is this sense of nostalgia, and I think the nostalgia plays in when Doc is reminiscing about his. Well, I feel like when he's reminiscing about his ex-old lady, that's how we'll talk about his ex-girlfriend, Shasta.
Miss Shasta Faye Hepworth.
I felt like, watching it a second time, I felt like that reminiscing is really also reminiscing about the good days of
back in the good old days before Charlie Manson screwed it up for them, and people looked at hippies as just like non-threatening little flower children. The movie's about the end of an era, about a new time, kind of a dark and scary new time for a lot of people.
And it's interesting, right? Because I remember especially the final scene when I saw it the first time, between which I've learned is Shasta isn't in the final scene in the book, but it was added in the movie. And some were saying that it was kind of like shows how P.T. Anderson's kind of a romantic. But how I viewed that scene is he's kind of clutching on to the past as a way to move forward. Like, we could tell that perhaps there's this image of what Shasta was, and there's the image of who Shasta is now. And I think with Doc, he can't help but remember how many good times they had.
That's interesting, man, because like there are moments in the movie where it's just like a flashback and just an image, like for instance, her at the campfire or some. There's some kind of. It looks like she's at a campfire or something, but she's just smiling. She always looks really, really happy. And then when you see her in the present time in the movie, she never really looks happy. She's never happy. She always looks upset.
The reality of the relationship at that time is much different than what they remembered of the relationship back in the good old days. And
that's cool, because it's like that with everything, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Like you think back at anything, any relationship you had with a girl, or some trip that you took with your family. You don't remember like the shitty times. You remember. You kind of write all that stuff off, or you forget it, which is
because the movie in general is pretty pessimistic about where things are going. Nixon's going to be in the White House for 4 more years, until Watergate, and that really f's everything up. With the government, with people's view of the government. There's already growing contention about the government, which is humorously noted. Between Michael K. Williams' character about how they're doing his what was his party's name, his gang,
the Black Gorilla family,
the Black Gorilla.
That's a real gang.
Yeah, and then of course the bikers,
the Aryan Brotherhood,
and the fact that they're like kind of
doing deals like, together.
We happen to share some similar views towards the American government.
Yep.
Which got a big laugh in my theater. So I don't
really.
Yeah, I got in my theater both times. People really got a kick out of that line, but we'll talk about that too. Like,
I wish that I watched it in a packed theater the second time. There were we were talking about this before. It's not doing that well. There were only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people in that theater. It was a small theater, but still, it's a theater. There's 8 people in there.
Yeah, it was pretty packed the first time I saw it, and then the second time I saw it, I would say it was half full. Yeah, and I don't know, maybe because it's an LA movie, it just plays better with LA crowds. Because
probably
that's what's more surprising to me is that it's the crowds in LA. They seem to enjoy it, so I don't really understand. From my LA perspective. I just don't get it, because according to the people in my theaters, both times, they seem to enjoy it. I mean, there's obvious humor in the film. It's not.
Oh yeah, it's the funniest movie he's made since Punch Drunk Love.
Probably, yeah. and there's a bite to it. There's an edge to it, and you really understand it more when you watch it the second time. But it's all that stuff's there the first time. the chocolate banana. Did that not get a laugh in your theater? I mean, what the hell?
Of course, yeah.
Did that get a laugh? It had to have, right? I mean,
Where he's like choking on it, deep throating the chocolate banana, and then Joaquin or Doc, he's just watching the whole time, like fixated, like can't look away.
I mean, there's like obvious.
The times when Doc mutters, that was like he does that 2 or 3 times where it's just really funny, where he's just like.
Or when his lawyer comes in when Doc was arrested.
Yeah, and clients pay me for work, Doc. That part. that surprisingly didn't get any laughs.
I think got laughs in my theater. Jesus.
Yeah.
What
got a laugh? When he's talking to we'll call her Michelle Sinclair, Belladonna. Her character's name, she was Clancy Charlock. That's her name, and they're talking about. I just lost it. Oh, Moments, yeah, where she talks about that place. I think it's called Arapamiento or something like that. The development that he wants, that Mickey wants to build a place where people can live for free. And in his book, he just writes something Spanish.
Yeah, I got a laugh too. I got a laugh in my thing in my theater. But the Moto Panakeiko, huh? Moto Panakeiko.
Yeah, that got a laugh. That actually got laughs in this theater of 8 people.
I mean, I feel like the with my audience, I feel like everyone kind of was like excited when Josh Brolin came onto the screen. We should talk about that. We should talk about performances because Josh Brolin's performance, sadly, isn't getting the recognition that it deserved.
Yeah, bummer. He really kicks ass in this movie,
and he's out of sight. He's just so
far out, man. He's right on. He's groovy.
He's right on. He's out of sight.
It's just this conflicted morning. I love that they did that. That's something that I don't know if I missed it on the. And I don't want the whole thing to be talking about me having read the book and comparing it to the movie. I don't want it to be that
Jesus.
way. I'm saying I don't want it to be that way. Give me a break over
here. But by saying you don't want it to be like that, it's exactly like that. I don't know.
But I love that he's like portrayed as this morning guy. It's almost like when you get broken up with and you put on weight and you can't stop eating. Like he's in mourning. He's eating these chocolate bananas. He's always depressed. He's always angry, taking it out on poor Doc. Yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah,
it was funny in a sad sort of way. Because I found the sadness of the character the second time I watched it. I thought he was a pretty funny, broad character the first time I watched it, but then second time, like, there's, his kind of, like, you understand more with his wife, kind of, there's something weird going on between him and his wife. The fact that he kind of calls Doc in the middle of the night,
weird, right?
I was also wondering, this is kind of a different subject, but his aunt, he calls his aunt, and you never see her again in the movie.
I know. And it's also kind of weird that she knows so much about Mickey Wolfman.
Exactly, and then you don't see her again. That was pretty funny.
Well, I don't want to tell you, but in the book... No, I'm just kidding.
Is she in the book more often?
I think so.
Yeah, I figured, because she's kind of showed up.
Yeah, she's in the book more often, in the book.
And you're kind of you're like, oh well, we're going to see her more often. No,
I thought so, and that's another thing. When I saw like this giant cast, I was like, yes, we're gonna like a throwback to like early PTA when it was all about the ensemble cast. And you don't really get that here. It's more following Doc as he travels through, and it's like different episodes with each character that he interacts and gets new information to keep the story going. It's not all these people in the same world at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
were you surprised by that, or is that what you expected?
I just think I was constantly surprised. I think the first time I watched the film, I think there was a lot of anticipation for me. I was waiting for the next thing to happen. Yeah. And I think that's why some people call the movie slow, is because you're kind of waiting for the next thing to happen, because things are kind of developing at its gradual pace. Second time I watched it, I was surprised it ended as soon as it did. It moved really fast for me the second time I watched it. Because
it's so funny. The first time I watched it, it's like as soon as I get to that scene where they're trading the drugs with the Golden Fang folks, I was like, oh no, it's almost over. Like, it felt like it had just started for me, because it was so, just so much build-up, so much anticipation that I wanted it to last 4 hours. I don't know. Sorry to cut you off there.
Yeah, no. And what was great the second time I watched it is that I remembered almost every scene. I was like, oh, now we're going to be at this scene. Mm-hmm. It has a pretty. That's what's great about this movie, is that scene by scene, it's like brilliant scene after brilliant scene. There's going to be so many. When you watch this more often, there's going to be so many great scenes. Watching it more and more, because
there's so much in each of them.
Exactly. I mean, the Pussy Eater special, that also got a laugh in my theater. Yeah. And I feel like, I was surprised.
I was at the movies just now, and there were these 3 older folks watching the movie. They must have been in like their 60s, maybe. Yeah. And it was this guy and these 2 old ladies. And when he walks into the Chick Planet massage, and you've got the woman, and right at her pussy is where the little door opens, and you see her face, and he cracked up. He thought that was the funniest thing, and that just made my day.
You got to think they were like in their 20s and 30s when all this stuff was happening. So, I mean, you would hope that
they remember.
Yeah, they would remember stuff like that. That actually happened. Yeah, that was based on a real thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe he knows something we don't. But yeah. Overall, Overall, your overall viewpoint on this film, the second time watching it, how did it change from the first time you watched it? There.
Well, I think after watching it for the first time, I wasn't sure what I saw. Like I knew I enjoyed it. I knew that it needed a second viewing, though. I knew that I needed to wrap my head around it by watching it again and again. So after seeing it now a second time, I think I can see it for what it is, and it really just reinforces the impression that I got from the first viewing, which is that that it's a movie that I really like, that I think I'm going to grow to love.
I hope that's going to be how people feel about this movie, because, and I wonder about that, because is it just the expectations we have going in, or because there's people who see this movie and hate it. And do they know who Paul Thomas Anderson is? What expectations do they have? Going into this movie? We can't assume
that they do.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just, but for people who actually like Paul Thomas Anderson, first time we watch it, we're still kind of like not quite sure what's going on there. You know what I mean? But then you watch the second time, and for some reason it all kind of clicks, and it's just you're kind of like, no, wait, this is actually a great movie. Guys.
It's tough to wrap your head around, because it's different from anything he's ever done. Like, there are things about the Master that are, that you saw in There Will Be Blood, and, like, I kind of will put Boogie Nights and Magnolia in the same kind of paragraph, just because they both have a lot of things in common. And Hard Eight, that's his first movie. And then Punch Drunk Love is that him after, like, after the behemoth that Magnolia was, he needed to lighten things up a little bit and make this new story. And then it seems like he took some time off between Punch Drunk Love and There Will Be Blood, and he came back and he's a little more serious now. He's a little darker again, and he's just got a new style, and or maybe a grown up style, adapted a little bit, and he's continued to grow with that. And I wasn't sure what to expect with Inherent Vice. But it seems like it's nice, because he's taken everything that he's learned, and he's still able to be creative and not rely on what's worked in the past. Challenging himself, and that's always when you get the best artists. When you get an artist who's saying, like, people love that I'm doing this, so I'm going to do something totally different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he throws a little bit of everything in this movie. The scene where Doc enters that mental hospital, was it in Chai? Is it
Chris Skyler?
Yeah. I'm not gonna pretend I know how to pronounce that, but it speeds up. Like, that's a really fast-paced scene when they're just walking in and out of the corridors and the halls.
And there's so much going on.
There's so much going on. The second time I watched it, I was like, I laughed at something that no one else laughed at, because I noticed it this time with, like, the Jesus. The guys with the long hair looking like Jesus.
And they've got fucking
AK-47 machine guns strapped to them. And then once he goes inside the mental hospital, the mental ward.
Right when he walks in, you see through the window, right?
Yeah, through the window, they're just chasing somebody. And then there's, like, the one woman inside, she's like,
the shaky hand?
And she's, like, pouring it, and, like, You're doing great. Just so much going on.
It's just like nice and steady hand, steady as a statue or something like that. She's like, glad you noticed, doctor. And then somebody says something about the soup or whatever, like just really off the wall, really funny stuff.
It was so just zany. I mean, how that was not too long because there was that, and there was also the one in literally the Golden Fang building. I mean, there was some really broad, like fast-paced things going on between with those scenes. I think that the movie kind of like slows down and like ratchets things up a little bit, and slows down again. It kind of has like this, and I think that maybe that's what frustrated people is that it didn't really flow all at once. At least the first time you watch it. Second time I watched it, I felt like it flowed much better, but it was exciting watching those scenes again because he really does just fastens things up, the pace. And yeah, I think that's where you talk about like it kind of reminded me of early Paul Thomas Anderson, just the way those scenes kind of moved. But the comedy in those scenes are much broader and funnier than I think Paul Thomas Anderson has ever done. I think those are some of the funniest material he's ever worked with. I mean, obviously a lot of it comes from Pynchon, but the staging of those scenes, I thought was hilarious. And then, when he has that, they walk into that. Oh my god, this is what I want to say for the second part of this particular episode because there was so much going on. But when he's mimicking that anti-communist movie, and you see him his mouth, Burke's Dodger. And he's moving his lips to it, and he's just all intense. And it was so funny to me watching that again.
that was like side-splittingly funny for me when I watched that the first time. And then I knew it was coming, and it was still good.
It's still
I thought
good.
it lasted longer the first time that I watched it, because I watched it again, I was like, oh, that was shorter than I remembered. But I guess that just goes to show like how much I remembered that part. Yeah, that was it. His face is just, he's so into it. That is something. Let's talk about that Burke Dodger character. You want to split this into parts? You want to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break because the Burke Dodger thing. Again, that's something that you don't really pay attention to. It's the second time I watched it. At least for me, I didn't pay attention to that until the second time I watched it, and I was like, "Wow, this is really interesting." So we'll go ahead and let's take a break right now, and then we'll come back and we'll really get deep. We're gonna go deep into the rabbit hole.
Like
that is inherent. Deep. Yeah, Clancy Sherlock Deep. Oh my god. What are you wait a minute, what are we talking about?
You know what I'm talking about.
Two guys at once. Alright. We'll be right back after this break.
Alright, we'll be back.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the long take. We are gonna go deep into Inherent Vice in the second part of this episode. And Justin, one of the things I wanted to talk about, which we kind of mentioned towards the end of the last segment, is this character. Is this based on a real actor, Burke Dodger?
This guy, Burke Dodger. You know what? Until I got home and looked it up, I thought it was a real actor. But yeah, isn't that something that I'm trying to remember the movie where they talk about? I think it's in Chinatown, maybe, where they're talking about communists. Maybe not.
They could be. I mean,
there's some movie where they talk about. Oh no! This is actually, never mind. This is something that I saw online. So
what's that?
We'll see if this is relevant. But at one of the awards a couple years ago, they were giving the equivalent of a lifetime achievement award to this guy who was working in just one of the studios, and some of the people were giving him a standing ovation, and the other people were just. Oh,
are you talking about Elia Kazan?
Yeah, and it didn't
at the Oscars.
Didn't he out a bunch of his communist buddies?
Yes, he named names.
Okay, so that's kind of what this is about too, because this guy Burke Dodger, he was this actor. And he started having communist leanings, so I think it maybe was inspired by that. Or I mean, again, this was all in the book, which happened long before the movie.
Yeah, let's explain this. All right, so Burke Dodger, and this when they really bring up this guy?
He's introduced when he's talking to Sancho, and they're talking about the boat,
right.
the Golden Fang, the boat, and Burke Dodger is this actor who went away on this boat, and then when he came back. he was like a totally different guy. He was a communist when he left, or he had communist leanings, and when he came back, he was hardcore anti-red and making these propaganda movies.
Right. Yeah, and then it's really interesting seeing that connection with that. I keep calling it a mental hospital.
It's a loony bin.
A loony bin. Yeah, that's a much better word for it. A loony bin.
I guess it is a mental hospital, right? Yeah.
Just the way everything's connected. All right, because who owns that loony bin? Is it Crocker Fenway? Who owns that?
When you talk to him, he says he represents, which made me think maybe he's like a lawyer for them. Or maybe he's just one of the people that's in charge. It's a big operation, so there's got to be more than one person at the top. But yeah, he's high up there.
There's so many connections.
Well, you've
here.
got the Golden Fang. They talk about. I can't remember which character talks about like the vertical integration as far as economics goes. I think it's when you get to, or right before you get to Criscalodon. Whoever talks to Doc about Criscalodon is saying that. These guys are bringing in the drugs, and they're also trying to... I think it was actually the narrator who's explaining it, which comes in handy. They supply the drugs, and then they also supply the treatment. So they're making money on both ends.
It's all the same operation. Yeah. And then it ties in with the whole dental thing with Martin Short's character Blatnoid, and like that, they're all part of the Golden Fang.
It says it right there. I almost missed it because I was looking at Doc as he walked by, but when he walks into that office, it says like Golden Fang, yada yada.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
and the building is shaped like a golden fang. So
exactly. But what I'm saying is, Blatnoid explains to, quote unquote, explains to Doc what Golden Fang is, and it's like these group of dentists who form this, what do you call it?
It's a tax dodge for these dentists.
It's tax dodge, right. But it's clear, and when he walks through that big office where everyone's getting their teeth done, that everything is connected here.
Yeah, because that's...
between the heroin coming in and heroin losing, you lose what, calcium?
Yeah, that's what...
when you take heroin.
Hope Harlingen explains to him, the effects of heroin use. She says it sucks the calcium from your body and it screws up your teeth.
Right, and so these dentists are working on these people's teeth that are doing heroin.
And there are people in that scene that look like they're strung out, going through withdrawal or whatever.
Exactly, and then there's the people going to the loony bin. It's all connected, and then why is because that daughter
Japonica.
She was in the loony bin, right? Wasn't she?
She escaped from it. Yeah.
She escaped
she said
from
she's
it.
getting good at escaping, and she ran.
But
back.
why is she in the arms of Blatnoid? You know what I mean? If it's not connected, you know what I mean, man? It's a mystery inside of a riddle inside of enigma, man.
Yeah, like that's funny. I kind of just always assumed that they were at his office, but no, they must, because she's the daughter of the guy who's the head honcho, right?
Exactly.
And Blatnoid is, dentists are, they make a lot of money, so he's probably able to sit pretty high, or if he's one of the people that founded that aspect of the Golden Fang, because you've got all these places where they're laundering money. Like you're looking at Mickey Wolfman, the real estate mogul, but that looks like that was just a front for the Golden Fang. And then you've got all these the Channelview Estates. That's Mickey Wolfman. But what else?
Okay, so wait, hold on a second. So, because you read the book and you watched the movie twice, the whole real estate investment thing, how does that fit within the operation?
That's what I was thinking about actually on the drive home, because I was like, was it the Golden Fang that sent him away? Because the thing with Mickey was he wanted to give people... He started doing drugs, which is ironic.
Okay,
because, he started doing the very thing that is making the Golden Fang money. And if he's connected with the Golden Fang, how ironic is it that he starts doing drugs and then he realizes, oh, this is I should go against everything that they believe. So he wants to take all his money and build this utopia out in the desert where people can live for free. And I guess the Golden Fang folks don't like that because that's their money that he's working with, and who is he to do that? So they're going to take care of him and get him straightened out. But at the same time, what does Shasta say in the beginning of the movie? That it's the wife and her boyfriend that want to commit him. So did the Golden Fang go to her and say, listen, this is what's going on, and this is what we have to do about it, and we're going to make it worth your while if you go in on it with us to get rid of this guy? So, and then like it's also kind of weird that you've got all those cops were at the house investigating, I guess, his disappearance, but they were all just partying. They were all just barbecuing and whatever.
Right. Yeah, I was actually going to mention that. Yeah, go ahead.
Because, and then, I mean, that looks weird, but at the same time, it's like, it's obvious that she and her fella there, I can't remember, Riggs Warbling, the names in this story are incredible. But Sloane and Riggs are in on it, so they're not worried about his, they probably know where he is.
Okay. What's crazy is, they take him, he goes into this loony, but he comes out, and this is so insane because it's like almost like a weird connection to the movie Casino, Martin Scorsese's Casino, because all those casinos at the time during that movie were run by the mafia, basically. And then Robert De Niro's character kind of explains towards the end that it was taken over by basically waspy type characters.
And they wound up turning it into like a Disney type of thing for adults.
Exactly. Yeah. And Inherent Vice is kind of about that transition.
Yeah,
right.
And then that's what Sancho was talking about. Like, they want somebody in Vegas who is an Italian. He mentions that because, like, the joke is, like, they're talking about Howard Hughes. And then from Howard Hughes, they go to Vegas as the example. And, like, they want somebody to represent these companies that isn't so affiliated. So, yeah, that's cool that they show that side of that. That's
there's this overarching thing, or it feels like the Golden Fang kind of represents that change, that weird change between 60s free love and expression and all this stuff to kind of like this very emphatic reversal of all that into what we got in the 80s, where all this generation that used to be hippies are now working 9-to-5 jobs and are kind of found like this normal family life, you know what I mean? And they're all reminiscing about the good old days when they believed in stuff, man, and they really liked stuff. And now they have kids and like a minivan or a station wagon. And this story is like showing how things transition from one era to the next.
Yeah,
and it's kind of sad, It's kind of a movie that wonders what could have been, but also. Because I feel like a lot of it is a representation of things, between the Nixon era. And I remember Paul Thomas Anderson's when he was talking to Mark Maron in the podcast when Mark Maron's
podcast.
And he was saying, I forget who he was quoting. Was it Robert Downey Sr.?
Probably.
But he was saying that it's. Richard Nixon, he doesn't have a sense of humor.
Yeah, and it's really bad that we have a president.
That doesn't have a sense of humor, and I think that plays into largely into how things go head first into disaster almost for the hippie culture and all that stuff. Because what broke down the hippie movement? Heroin, right? Wouldn't you say?
I mean, that'd be a lot of things. I never really thought about like what brought an end to the hippie movement. I kind of just thought it was like something that happened in the '60s. And then people woke up and
but you think about it though, right? And it's like exactly how does something just stop? Because think about the last 20 years of our lives. Like, has there nothing like that's happened?
Like what? Like the hippie movement?
There's no movement. I mean, there's like the Tea Party movement, whatever. That's not even the same. You know what I mean? But we can't even compare it to anything that we've had in our lives. Because there's nothing that's been this intense. This free love type thing going on. That was going on in the late 60s. A psychedelic type thing.
I think let's stay there for a little bit, because the 60s happened like 20 years after World War II, so all these people were coming home and having babies. So the world had a lot of young people at the same time. All these, the baby boomers, right? They were in their 20s during the 60s or their teens or whatever. And at the same time, you had Vietnam going on, and the kids that weren't at the war were at home saying, how fucked up is it that we're over in the jungle, our boys are getting killed, they're killing their people, and for what? This has nothing to do with us, So it inspired that, and then what else? I guess it's just also the 50s. I mean, we weren't there, so we just really have pop culture to go off of, and books and movies and stuff. but the 50s seem pretty straight to me. Like, greasers and, go into, the diner or whatever, going to dances. I'm, like, basically just describing Grease. But, that's, like, basically that. And I know that there's more to it than that. But, like, looking at the surface as far as, like, pop culture goes, the 50s is where you got the poodle skirts and the greasers. And then in the 60s, you've got the hippies. And then after that, these things change. In the 70s, it's, like, the beginning of disco and hard drugs. And that bleeds into the 80s, 90s to today. But yeah, heroin has a lot to do with that. Because when did heroin even become a big deal?
According to Thomas Pynchon, at least, it seems like heroin, once they pumped heroin into the streets, that's when all these hippies were kind of getting zonked out on the smack. And that's kind of... That kind of was the beginning of the end for that movement, because
it's like they're taking advantage of these people whose idea of, like, drugs is a way to, like, free your mind and get a new perspective, and, like, from their point of view, they're saying, like, these guys are already using substances, so let's get them hooked on something that can really fuck their lives up and make it beneficial.
And it seems crazy, but then you think about the introduction of crack to America in the mid '80s into poorer neighborhoods and
black neighborhoods, Spanish neighborhoods,
and it doesn't seem all that crazy, does it?
No, yeah. I mean, there's even an example that Tariq comes to him. There's this black militant type guy, and he's explaining to him how, like, he went back to his old stomping grounds to see the old gang, see how everybody's doing, and it was all gone. And it's Channelview Estates. They wiped out the whole neighborhood, and then they're building this this new thing over there, gentrification. And then there's another example of that, and it's a little more subtle, but in the flashback where Doc and Shasta are looking for a place to score.
Oh, yeah, I was going to bring that up, too.
They get led by the Ouija board to this vacant lot. And then what winds up being
Golden Fang.
Is the Golden Fang.
Oh, my God.
Bum, bum, bum.
Holy shit. Yeah. And that's what people, if you only saw this movie once, and you were kind of like confused, you're missing all of this.
I didn't like it. Yeah,
all of this stuff you're missing. Oh my God!
It's like it's fun to geek out over it. Like it's a little nerdy, but whatever. Like the amount of satisfaction that you can get over talking about a movie with your friend is more than just leaving. I don't know, the Avengers and be like, oh, that was awesome, and then not really thinking about it after that. This is something that sticks with you. It stays with you. You can't forget it. The music stays with you. The music is so good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. The opening song, Can, Vitamin C, which, hey, Vitamin C. I mean, calcium, Vitamin C, they're not exactly the same.
You think there's something there?
That's interesting, though, right? He said, Damu Suzuki. I kind of got into Can a little bit in college. Because they're pretty kick-ass. Very modern sounding band from the early 70s, like German krautrock going on there. But you listen to that album that's on, I think it's I want to say Tego Mago, I think, and that's a pretty modern sounding band. I mean,
they're a German band.
Yeah, they're German. Well, the band itself is German. The lead singer at the time, Damu Suzuki, he was Japanese.
Japanese? What? I didn't know anything about this band until seeing this movie. I recognized the song from a movie called Life After Beth.
Oh yeah,
they used that same song. That's that one.
Well, you know who sampled Can, right?
No, who?
Kanye West.
And what song?
Sing Swan Song. Sing Swan Song was sampled into Kanye West's song Drunken Hot Girls. Drunken Hot Girls. The whole melody is ripped off from that. Well, not ripped off, but do 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 do. Drunken Hot Girls. That's the Can melody. I mean that. So even Kanye West was representing Can. So
okay, cool.
So it's pretty cool band. But okay, not to get sidetracked.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
we I
think there is a hidden message there. That when he uses that song, because hey, you're losing your vitamin C.
You're losing your
vitamin C. Like, I mean, I would assume that heroin also. I mean, calcium and vitamin C are exactly the same, right? But I mean, I'm sure if you lose calcium, you're not really getting a lot of vitamin C either. So it's all the little connections there, man. It's just...
Maybe. That seems like kind of a reach to me, but you've had more time to think about it after your second viewing than me.
You think that's a reach? With all the other connections that are happening in this movie, I have to feel like this is the opening song of the movie. That's the opening song. And I have to feel like...
like as an overall thing about addiction, drug addiction? Losing your calcium in your teeth? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's all connected to like that underlying kind of theme, underlying themes that are going on in the movie that's persistent. You know,
I just looked at it as like a take on where society was going and the free love leading to this era of paranoia, and that's not wrong, I guess.
Well, no, it's all part of it.
Yeah,
there is that paranoia. That's where the paranoia comes from. That's where Thomas Pynchon's paranoia comes from. You know, because he probably, you know, he lived through this era, and he's like, wait, and listening to the Mark Maron podcast, I haven't really read much Thomas Pynchon. And when I say I haven't read much of it, I really haven't read any of his stuff at all. But a lot of his stuff includes cults and secret societies and stuff like that.
The one thing that they said in the podcast was like, it seems like Pynchon is a guy that knows more than the rest of us, or knows more than he should.
Right.
Like about
you think that why
stuff that he's writing about.
You think that why he hides his identity?
I mean, who knows? Who knows what's going on there?
That's all kind of interesting, you know. But what you were saying before, right? Because I think it's interesting to talk about generations here, because you say the 50s are clean, and I agree. But the 50s were also the first time when teenagers became an important part of like marketing, advertising, music. Elvis came out in the 50s, and you know, black music became popular with white youth in the 50s, and so a lot of that kind of, I gotta say, you know, you go from the 40s, which was the end of World War II, the 50s were it's like it kind of, you know, you think about Rebel Without a Cause, you think about you know, James Dean in general, and or young Marlon Brando. You know, that kind of like,
that's the image that comes to mind. Yeah,
the hunkiness, the like that hunkiness type thing that you didn't have with actors before. Just like that kind of like iconic look. The leather jackets, the motorcycles, and all that stuff.
The T-shirt with the cigarette rolled in the arm. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, all that stuff was like the beginning of teenagers kind of being teenagers. You know, it was all innocent back then, sure. But that was when they started, you know, that was like really when like they were playing their early rock and roll music, and they were hanging out with their cars. You think about American Graffiti, George Lucas film, you know, them just kind of riding around and just kind of just not really care, you know, almost like the early version of being a slacker, you know, just kind of being teenagers. Yeah. And so so those teenagers, 15 years later, you know, from the mid-50s to 70s, those are your late 20s, early 30s people, probably in the midst of the hippie movement, you know? I mean, that's where that line goes through, you know? And then in between that, you have the Beatlemania, you have, you know...
Woodstock.
You have Woodstock, you have LSD, you have all these other drugs. Then you have Vietnam, and a lot of those people in the 50s who were teenagers in the 50s wound up going into Vietnam, and they witnessed JFK's assassination. And this is 1970 when Inherent Vice came out. So, how many assassinations alone in like a 6-year span? You know, JFK, RFK, his brother, RFK, Malcolm X,
Martin
Luther King. And that's just 4 off the top of our heads, you know. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say
Sharon Tate.
Oh my God,
that's a big deal.
Yeah, the whole Manson thing. Alone is a whole other thing, and you gotta wonder about that too, because I think Manson kind of brought along this kind of fear towards hippies, right?
Yeah, I think I mentioned something about it before. How like they were just like non-threatening flower children who wanted peace. How cute is that? You know, like people that didn't get it, people that were of the straight world persuasion, as Doc said it in the beginning of the movie.
It was almost a convenient thing where it's like, we gotta crack down on these hippies. There might be more Charlie Manson types.
A little too convenient, if you ask me.
Are we entering another rabbit hole?
But yeah, like that's the thing. You know, that one tragedy happens, and then people look at hippies as threatening now. Now they're afraid of them.
Right, and then so we need to get rid of them. And how do you get rid of them? Heroin.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So it seems like the Golden Fang is like bigger than... It gets bigger the more you think about it. Because they have a handle on politics. They've got this Vigilant California group, right. Which... what did they say? Like, the second time I watched it, I was like, oh, because at first I thought it was like a group against Nixon, but then you realize watching it in the second time that, that's what I realized, that it's a group that supports Nixon, and they're trying to scare people into supporting Nixon also. Right. So they've got this guy, Coy, who, now that he's at this rally, they can plug him anywhere that they want and use him to get information or whatever. He's a snitch. He's like a professional snitch. The Golden Fang. Where were we going? I was thinking more about Coy's character, because that's another thing that I kind of want to get into. Coy, he's this. There's heroin again right there. He and his girl are strung out on heroin. They have a kid, and the kid's in a bad state. You know, he's not happy with what's going on, and he's like, I got to get out of here for their sake. Not like he's trying to escape, but he has to do something. So what he winds up doing essentially is like selling his soul to to Vigilant California, Golden Fang, whatever, to the Golden Fang. And they give his girl a check with this sum that they never, like, there's another red herring, like, who knows how much.
Oh, right, yes.
It's a lot. Mm-hmm. They kind of buy her off, like, your husband's gone. She doesn't really... they say she doesn't identify the body. She was just called and notified that he was dead, but she doesn't believe it. You know,
right.
She doesn't believe it. So, and then I wonder why she would get her teeth fixed. Do you think that was her idea to go get her teeth fixed, or do you think something must have happened there? Because the Golden Fang has that thing that
maybe they offered to get her teeth fixed, because that would make a lot more sense. Yeah. That they're like, here's this big check. Or maybe that was the first thing they did, because didn't she, like, find out the big check later, right?
Well, I think she explains it like, I got a call that Coy was dead, and then a little bit after that, I get this check in the mail, or something like that.
Yeah, it's definitely all connected, that's for sure.
Yeah,
you know?
And there are things about this movie where it's like, you try to explain it, like, how it would literally happen. Would somebody go to her house, tell her about the dentist? You know, that's not the point. The point is... The Golden Fang fixes teeth. Her teeth are fixed. However it happened, that's the main idea here. You know what I mean? So Coy is working for this place, for the Golden Fang, basically he's just their slave. But it was so that he could save his family. And really what the story winds up being about is getting Coy back to his family, because now he has the regret. He misses what's her name, Hope, and he misses Amethyst, and he wants to be there for them. And now that they're both clean, they can be. So it becomes about reuniting a father with his family. I guess. Oh yeah, and there's more to that. At the very end of the movie, when Coy when he's running out of that house in the Topanga Hills Canyon or whatever place, that big house. Mm-hmm. He says he just got a call from Burke Stodger. And did you pick up on that?
Wait, what? Hold up. Go back. What'd you say?
When he's go back. Doesn't compute. When he's talking about he gets in Doc's car to drive away from that house at the end when he's able to, when the Golden Fang releases him.
Okay.
After Doc has his meeting with Crocker. And Crocker's like, we'll give you money in exchange for the drugs. And Doc's like, well, forget the money. I want you to, release Coy, so he can go back to his family. And then he's like, oh, that's all you want? Oh, yeah, sure, okay. So they release him. And then when he's getting into the car, he's like, I don't know what you did, but I just got a call from Burke Stodger himself. You're a bad man, to Doc, saying like he's a man who can do things that he didn't expect or whatever, but he gets the call, like, then I was like, oh shit, that guy, there he is again, Burke Stodger, the guy who was in the movies, the guy who was anti-communist, it leads me to believe that he's at the top of the Golden Fang, that he's in charge of it all.
Probably.
Yeah, because he's an actor, he's got connections, he's got money, and he was on that boat. He was on the boat, and came back with the drugs, and There you go. It's a very
Yeah.
convoluted plot that goes all over the place. But yeah, the more you think about it, like the more fun it gets. And I like that it's so complicated that after one viewing, there's no way that you'd be able to grasp the story. And after two, I'm still like, I want to see it one more time. I just want to watch it, like have it in my house so I can rewind the scenes and really pick up on some of those things because there's so much in every scene.
There is. But you know what? I wanted to talk to you about more about Bigfoot, the character, because it's interesting how this is something you brought up too with when the cops are investigating, or is it the feds? Or is it the feds who are investigating the disappearance of
Mickey?
Mickey. Was it the feds or the cops? It was the cops.
It's LAPD guys.
Right, they were there
for
the last. They were there for like the last day. Right,
yeah.
There was only one more day for them to be there before they were gone, and they basically weren't even doing anything. Right?
Yeah, they were just partying. The feds are the ones that had Mickey in their custody.
All right, because this is going to be connected to Bigfoot. Don't worry.
Okay.
Mickey's wife and her lover, they abducted and committed Mickey to an insane asylum. So, why are the cops there in the first place? Like,
to make it look legitimate, I guess. Look like a kidnapping. The cops have to be in there to look for evidence or whatever.
But if the cops are just having fun, does that mean that the cops already know what's going on and they're in on it? Because they're deliberately... And here's another thing. Bigfoot seems to be the only one who really cares about doing his work. Aside from Doc, Doc seems to at least care about getting his job done. But Mickey seems... but there's so many characters. But Bigfoot seems to be the only one who really cares about the law still. Really cares about being... he seems incorruptible. Doesn't he? Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah, that's a good word for him.
And that's probably what connects.
Even though he's got major flaws, but he's incorruptible as far as that goes.
But so, and he's not partying with Mickey's wife, and he's not at that house. And
he's also just getting over the loss of his best friend.
Exactly. Although didn't that happen like a few years previous too? Right?
I don't know if it was a few years. Oh, yeah, they said that he never got a new partner after that, so maybe it was years.
So what I'm saying is this, right? Because he starts to take on this case that Doc's kind of been involved with, which leads to him taking all that heroin from that place. Whose place is that?
Adrian Prussia,
right? He takes the heroin from Adrian Prussia's place, right?
Yeah, he gets Prussia's Prussia's character who started out as a loan shark, but wound up being essentially a hitman. And I think he had a connection with the LAPD because they said every time that he would get brought in, he would get let go. Adrian Prussia had Bigfoot's partner killed, or shot him himself, maybe. I don't know, but he killed Bigfoot's partner. And to get back at him, Bigfoot mixes Doc in there, because if Bigfoot did it, it would just come back to him, I guess. So he wanted to use Doc. Either way, it's kind of screwed up that he used Doc that way. But, Doc winds up in a lot of danger, and he was able to escape kind of miraculously. He kills Puck, and then he kills Adrian, presumably. And then there is Bigfoot right there the whole time. I guess he just arrived there as all that shit was going down, and he's taking heroin out of Adrian's car and putting it in his.
Right. So, and doesn't Bigfoot get in trouble, though? I mean, something about civil rights violations?
I think they were just describing how he is. I don't know if they're that's
no. At the end, when he's talking to Doc, he mentions civil rights violations. At the end,
I took that as him just mocking Doc's idea of him.
Oh,
That's how I took it. You might be right. I might be wrong. I don't know. But that's just how
I thought what the whole thing that happened with. All right, can I just tell you what I thought happened there?
Entertain your thoughts.
Okay. I thought at the end there that Bigfoot, he takes all this heroin from AG in Prussia, and then what does he do with that heroin? He gives it to Doc, right?
Yeah,
and then
Doc he sneaks it into his car.
And then Doc exchanges it.
Yeah.
But I thought that Bigfoot got in trouble somehow because of that, and that he got reprimanded or something. And I felt like that end scene between him and Doc was kind of an unspoken thing where Bigfoot is incorruptible, but it seems like he can't really do his job right. Doc says "Hey brother, are you okay, brother?" He's like, I'm not your brother." He's like, "But you sure could use a keeper." And It just seems like Bigfoot's fight to stay legit and everything like that seems like a lost cause, because it just seems like the LAPD is very corruptible, but Bigfoot stands alone in his incorruptibleness. So I thought that something was going on like that, where...
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he got in trouble. Part of me wonders how he would have gotten caught doing that, because it was all very, under the darkness of night. And the only way that, I think they mentioned that he called it in. You can bet that Bigfoot's calling it in right now, that he's got the drugs, on his walkie-talkie or whatever. That the drugs are in Doc's Dodge Dart. But I think that the scene that you're describing works without the him getting in trouble. I don't think he got reprimanded or anything.
But there just seems to be a sadness there.
The sadness, I think, comes from his struggle, like you said, to be this incorruptible guy who, or maybe it's I got the guy that I wanted and I still don't feel any better. And also, he and Doc have this thing, they're both up at the wee hours of the evening, talking to each other on the phone. It's almost like they're friends, but they're not. They're opposites.
I would say they
rivals,
are. I would say they are friends. They just don't want to admit it.
Yeah, they don't want to admit it. That little, it's kind of cute, the exchange that they have at the Japanese pancake house, where Doc puts on his glasses and walks out, "Good day," after they're talking about copper and gold and chemistry. And
you think about that scene, when he's demanding moto pancake and saying that what he loves about that place is the respect. And then Doc says, I guess you didn't get that from your mother or something like that, which was funny. But it just that is an interesting thing there, because it just seems like Bigfoot, that's kind of what he wishes he had, at least maybe in the Force.
But look at him; he's an actor. He wants to be an actor.
There's that too. There's a lot to Bigfoot. Because
he's got the SAG card. He's in the commercial. For
he
the
wants to act.
He's on what's that name of the show? I think it's called Adam 12 or something, that 70s cop show.
Right.
Yeah. He doesn't. I think there's more to him. There could be a movie just about Bigfoot.
There is a lot. There is a lot to him, right? Because he can't get work as an actor anymore. Even the extra work is thinning out, he says.
Yeah. He doesn't even have any lines in that one clip where Doc's watching.
Yeah.
Oh, Bigfoot.
But it's interesting. Why do you think part of him wants to be an actor? Is it just an escape from the Force, you think, or is it just his way of or do you think his dream was to be an actor and then he became a cop? It's interesting to think which came first. Was it passion for acting, or was it the passion to be a cop? And I would think that no one really wants to be a cop. I feel like you become a cop because it's the best job for you at that point. Although people who really want to become cops are the biggest dicks as cops, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
So yeah,
I think the book goes more into Bigfoot's history and what brought him to where he is. So maybe if I read it again, I'll be able to answer.
Maybe I should read it too. But
you should give it a read now that you have. Now that you've seen the movie and you say you own the book, right?
Yeah, I think I have it now. I think it might still be in New Jersey, but it's I think all that is really fascinating. We could also talk a little bit about Sasha before we end this particular episode, because
We have to stop talking about it. All right, now I feel like how I felt when I was watching it the first time, and we were at the scene where he's exchanging the drugs, and I'm like, oh no, there's probably only like 2 or 3 more scenes.
We'll be talking about it again when it comes out on Blu-ray for sure. Okay. I don't know. I just want to make sure we talk about other stuff too before you fall asleep. But that's why I'm talking fast, really fast. But no, because I think Sasha plays into this too.
Shasta?
Shasta. Sorry. She is very much corrupted. I think Doc is incorruptible. Why does Shasta like Doc so much? Because he's the only one of the hippies who won't do heroin. He won't do it.
That's what they talk about that one. Yeah, that it's not in the actual movie, but that's in one of the trailers, right?
What?
She's like, he's the one hippie that didn't wound up.
No. What's her face? Joanna Newsom's character. Yeah, she explains that when they go back in time and they're doing a Ouija board. And then the reason why she's with
You're right. Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't much, but he's the only one who won't do heroin, and she liked that. But so he's in a way he's incorruptible, and it just seems like he's in a world where he's in a world he embraced the hippie culture,
fits right in there, and now he's in this place where he doesn't quite belong.
Exactly, And I think that's why, he and Bigfoot kind of have this connection, because they both are kind of in places where they don't belong.
Yeah, and they stay true to it despite the world that they're in and despite society telling them to give it up. Like, the Force is telling Bigfoot, no, don't be so serious, and the world is telling Doc to, clean your feet and put on some shoes.
Yeah, exactly. But Doc kind of refuses to let go of that side of himself at that point still. I mean, if he cleaned up, he probably would wind up getting married to someone like Penny Kimball, you know what I mean, and have that kind of straight life. But
what a tragic character she is, huh?
Kind of, right?
At the end, she's like, when she comes over to his house and she's like, tell me you love me or something like that. It's like, oh, that's sad. And you're at this, you're slumming it with this hippie. Mm-hmm. From her perspective, not dissing Doc. I love Doc, but you're slumming it with this hippie in the wee hours or in the middle of the night, and you're smoking pot, and you've got this job. You're supposed to be like a straight edge person, and you want the love of this guy who should be beneath you according to society.
I think there's a part of her too that kind of enjoys that side of it, even though she doesn't want to admit it. And her being with Doc is kind of like her way of kind of maybe she used to be one of those hippies, but then cleaned her act up and then became a DA. Who knows?
Now she misses it.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah,
but back to Shasta. Sorry,
but yeah, and then Shasta is just I think she represents hippie culture in general. I feel like her character is so important and crucial to the film thematically, because with the way Paul Thomas Anderson especially kind of clings on to that narrative. I think a reason why he does it because I think he understands that Shasta really is, to Doc, represents so much more than just an ex-old lady.
The time is the ex-old lady.
Exactly. Uh-huh. And I think that's the case in general. When we think back about our former flames or whatever, we're not necessarily thinking about them, but the times that we had then.
Where you were and how you felt and how that person made you feel. And you hear that song on the radio and you can close your eyes and you're back there. Yeah.
The best way I think to wrap this all up is just how much actually Inherent Vice compares to The Master. You think, when Paul Thomas Anderson was struggling to really get The Master going, he moved on to Inherent Vice. Why? And I think there's a reason. I think there's a legitimate reason why this material attracted him. Because...
Wait, moved on to Inherent Vice? You mean with his next movie, or...?
Before he went up filming The Master, he went up writing Inherent Vice.
Gotcha.
So, there had to have been a reason why, at that moment, adapting Inherent Vice made sense. And I feel like, now that we've seen Inherent Vice, and now that we've seen The Master, it seems like Doc and Freddie Quell from The Master, or even Bigfoot from Inherent Vice, they're all kind of lost. They're kind of lost characters. Doc and Bigfoot are more obviously put together, in a matter of speaking, but they're still very lost. It almost seems like every character in Inherent Vice is in some way they have a little bit of Freddie Quell in them. You know what I mean? And and you begin to like realize that what he was doing with the with the master, with that character, you start to kind of see that lostness, that sense of
where do I fit in?
Not really knowing not really knowing your place is. I feel like that's very prevalent in Inherent Vice, and I think that watching The Master, watching Inherent Vice, I feel like they're going to be more linked than you and I think they are at this point. I think they're very much linked with Paul Thomas Anderson's work, and stylistically, they aren't that far off. There's a lot of close-ups, there's a lot of slower takes, a lot of long shots. So yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I think.
That guy, Joaquin Phoenix in Inherent Vice?
Exactly. That's another thing. I thought that one dude was going to be in...
Yeah, he was supposed to be.
Wait a minute.
The guy who plays the brother of Daniel Plainview. The guy who gets choked out.
Okay.
I can't remember his name.
That's weird that you already knew who I was talking about.
Yeah, I actually... I was wondering about that the other day. Are we racing to IMDb right now?
He was not in this movie at all, for sure.
No, but... On Sigs and Red Vines, they when they were announcing the cast,
Kevin J. O'Connor.
Kevin J. O'Connor. He was supposed to be in the movie.
Yeah, he definitely was.
Maybe he wasn't up to snuff.
Even if you look at his Wikipedia page, it says it has Inherent Vice listed, but no character name. Let me go to IMDb because. Can you make some dramatic music while I search Inherent Vice? All right, here's the results. He's not in Inherent Vice. He's not in it. We should do that. Whenever one of us has to search something on IMDb, we should just do...
Okay.
Yeah, that makes it sound interesting anyway.
But that's what I was doing. I was looking it up, and then I realized that he was in The Mummy. That's like the thing that he's known for. He's that weird character. That skinny dude. I was like, oh shit, that's the same guy. Seeing him in There Will Be Blood, that was like, I don't know, it seems like a totally different person.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got that small role in The Master.
I thought it was going to be like one of these like these actors that would wind up appearing in all Paul Thomas Anderson's movies.
Yeah,
and he's just in bit parts. That would have been cool. It seems like Paul Thomas Anderson likes him. I guess he couldn't find any room for him in Inherent Vice. I guess.
Which is funny because there's so many characters.
Yeah, there is.
There's so like I wish that PTA would just make a movie of all the stuff that didn't get included in Inherent Vice. Because there's so much stuff that I'm thinking about. Like when I saw that his name was attached to the movie, I was thinking like who he could play, and like there's this one pimp character who's really really funny, and then there's this whole section where they go to Vegas, and I was like, oh cool, he went to Vegas in Hard 8, now he's gonna shoot that again. I wonder how it'll be this time, but yeah, that's why I was so bummed when the movie started coming to a close, and I was like, oh man, like I can feel it, like this. It's been 2 years plus a couple months in there that I've been just anticipating this moment, and now this moment's almost gone, and I'll have to move on and start looking forward to the next movie.
Yeah.
Are there any other directors that you're so like that you can't wait and you're just holding your breath for their releases? Who else makes movies that get you this excited?
As excited as Paul Thomas Anderson?
Well, yeah, where you're looking forward to it for years.
I mean, I definitely look forward to Quentin Tarantino's movies, probably to a lesser extent. The answer is not many other filmmakers. I definitely... It's going to be fascinating to see where Steve McQueen goes from 12 Years a Slave. For a while there, the Coen brothers were kind of like that, but they started making...
That's what I was thinking about.
They started making movies like once a year, and then... I don't know. They made so many movies between like No Country for Old Men and like True Grit that are like, okay, I can wait for another Coen Brothers movie, because like they made so many in that short period. So they made
That's the benefit of having two people working on it. You get to double, in twice the time or half the time.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I could list you directors, but the answer is there really isn't.
Nobody's on that level.
Yeah, no one is on that level. You know what I mean? But I mean, not to say that there's plenty of great filmmakers out there, folks. But we just love Paul Thomas Anderson so much, and it's it's a shame because I think the reason why we love him so much is because his movies do have such high replay value. And Inherent Vice, I think, is going to be the movie that has the most replay value because it's so dense. And you think about, it's interesting because Paul Thomas Anderson mentioned to Mark Maron that he tried to adapt other Pynchon stories. And when you look at Punch Drunk Love, how dense that movie is, you wonder if that's like, that denseness is what he was going for. You know, that kind of Pynchon. Because you look at, there's like so many like weird plot lines to Punch Drunk Love that, you know, the pudding, you know, the healthy choice. Like, he really goes into that. You know what I mean? In that movie. And you watch it again and again.
Plays a big part.
You watch it again and again, and there's like these like, you know, is he Superman? Is Barry Superman? Is, you know, Emily Watson's character following him in that grocery store? Like, oh my god! And like, yeah, it's just so much craziness in that movie. But when you watch it the first time, you don't really get all that. And the movie's pretty straightforward with Punch Drunk Love. And then you watch it again, you're like,
on it, yeah. For that, I mean, it does that, but then it does all these other things too, and that's crazy. Isn't that crazy to think about?
So yeah, it's just exciting to see him work. And yeah, I think the reason why we lament the fact that this movie is doing so poorly is because we want him to make more movies, and you know, it would have been.
And I just don't get it because I was like a casual movie fan. I didn't even know his name the first time I watched There Will Be Blood. I just saw it because I'd been hearing so much about Daniel Day-Lewis's performance, and I was like, I've been seeing the parodies and stuff like that, and I was like, I've got to see this. And then that movie changed me and changed the way that I see or that I watch movies. And I'm wondering what other people like. How can you just watch a movie like There Will Be Blood and just move on from that, or The Master?
I don't know.
If you're like, but then there are people that can't even sit through The Master.
I don't know. I mean, the one thing that gives me hope is that there were times when, like, Wes Anderson, I mean, when Fantastic Mr. Fox came out, I saw it in theaters the day it came out, and I'm like, wow, this is just on a whole other level for Wes Anderson. And I was really excited. Then the movie, you know, the box office came out, and everything, the reports came out, and I was like, really? Wound up, like, just, it didn't do well at the box office at all. And I was just kind of really bummed out, and I was like, wow, what is he even going to do next? Like, he can't even get this animated movie geared towards kids, like, to get much.
And then he did Moonrise
Kingdom, and then then all of a sudden he wound up getting, he wanted to make his movies. Finally started making money. His last two movies have made considerable money in the box office, and I wonder if it's because Moonrise Kingdom came out in May.
Yeah, people have more time to really think about them and digest them. Yeah, Inherent Vice could have it seems like it'd be better as a summer movie.
Yeah, you know, like it was a little bit released in the summer, and it just kind of like builds its audience. It's interesting that Warner Brothers, you know, really stuck to this December 12th release. It seems like they kind of were once the movie.
They did the same thing with Her, didn't they?
Yeah, and I want to talk about that in if we have time, because with the Oscars, with Warner Brothers, at the very least, I would say the reason why Inherent Vice even got 2 nominations is because of Warner Brothers, because Her was not an Oscar movie, and it still wound up getting a Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, and a couple other nominations for the Oscars. And it seems like at the very least, Warner Brothers knows how to appeal to the Academy. I mean, they fooled them with American Sniper, so they really know what they're doing there. But but overall, what I'm saying is that I just hope that I wish that they would try to release it somewhere in another time span, and try to get this movie to gain audience without the expectations of Oscars or just the crowdedness of Christmas and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah, because there's so much taking people's attention away from movies right now, like other movies. You know, there's so much in the cinema these days.
Yeah, and
this time of the year.
And I think the thing we have to do is realize that Paul Thomas Anderson is not an Oscar-friendly filmmaker, and once we realize that, we won't be trying to force these movies into late fall or early winter releases, trying to get them to make money through Oscar buzz, instead of doing what I feel like the success of Grand Budapest Hotel should be a lesson that these types of filmmakers do have an audience. You just have to release them at a time when there's enough space where people will catch on and watch their films, because you put it in December, you wedge it in there in the middle of October, November, or December, and try and get an audience by Oscar nominations. They're not Oscar-friendly filmmakers. And what's funny is that, because Grand Budapest Hotel was released in March, it was able to have enough time. I think we did talk about this in the last episode. Have enough time to really gain an audience, and then it winds up getting 9 Oscar nominations. So I just think that in order for Paul Thomas Anderson films to be successful, because you look at Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love, There Will Be Blood, The Master, Inherent Vice, all of them were released in the fall. And even though Boogie Nights and Magnolia did pretty decent in the box office compared to Master and Inherent Vice anyway, and Punch Drunk Love, they were all released in the fall. And could they have done better in the spring? Who knows? But what I do know is that I think that's the best way to release a Paul Thomas Anderson film, is release it in the spring or the early summer and let it build its audience that way. Don't try and make it an Oscar movie, because he's not that filmmaker.
And going by my introduction to him with There Will Be Blood, that's the impression that I got, because that movie was so successful. It did get a Best Picture nomination, didn't it? Yeah, so it was up there, and then Daniel Day-Lewis wins for his acting in the movie. So that's just kind of like the impression that I got once I learned who this guy was, because I had heard of Boogie Nights and stuff like that, but I hadn't really seen anything. It wasn't until I discovered There Will Be Blood that I went back and really dove in. But I kind of just took it like this guy's an auteur. He's just a super creative genius as far as I'm concerned. That is just that caliber, and that and he can be that even if he's not like the Oscar bait type of director, because you've got guys making Oscar baiting movies that you don't even like. The director of The Imitation Game. What else has he done?
He did Headhunters, a Norwegian film, I think it was.
Yeah. So that's kind of my point. Like these guys, their names, their full names. Your Quentin Tarantino, Wes Anderson, Joel and Ethan Coen, Paul Thomas Anderson. They're kind of like the directors. You know what I mean? And I guess you have something there. All of his movies have been released in the fall,
except for Hard Ape, that was just dumped in theaters. That doesn't really even count.
Yeah. I figured that's what you were doing when you omitted that from the list. Like that was his first movie, so
it was just dumped in theaters. There was, you can't really parse through that as far as the strategy there. There was no strategy there. They just they dumped it in February of '97, and that's where it was. But
since his start with New Line and everything that came after that, it's been
all fall.
It's been all trying to get the awards.
Yep. And for Boogie Nights and Magnolia, they were nominated for a few Oscars. There Will Be Blood managed to really catch on in a big way. I don't know how it did. Maybe it's because Daniel Day-Lewis's
There Will Be Blood.
Well, because
is that performance?
Yeah, I think it's the world-class actor of Daniel Day-Lewis. I think the Academy was able to really latch on to the film that way and accept it, and because because Daniel Day-Lewis is such a great actor that him being like this master villain, this evil man or whatever, I think that really drew people in instead of pushing them away. And then because also the film has a definitive ending, which we talked about before too, about Paul Thomas Anderson. That movie has a definitive ending, an exclamation point, and I think that's what allowed people to be like, yeah, we get on board with the film, because it was nominated for 8 Oscars. And at the time I was like, oh my god, he's gotten through there. He's going to be nominated for Best Director every time he makes a movie. But but you know what? That's the thing though, is that he switches it up, and he's almost a different kind of filmmaker now than what he was when he made There Will Be Blood. And There Will Be Blood started looking more and more like a kind of like its own entity. It has similarities.
I'm thinking about all his movies and how they end, and There Will Be Blood, in my opinion, is the only movie that just ends on the line just ends there. That's where the movie ends. That's where the story ends. With Boogie Nights, there's still a lot going on. After that dick shot, there's more happening.
Is there? I thought it was just the dick shot and that was it.
No, I mean the dick. Yeah, that's the end of the movie. But it's not like the world doesn't stop turning there. When Daniel Plainview at the end of his life, he killed the guy that has been
a thorn in his side, for so long, and now like what else is there to do?
Mm-hmm.
Just chill out.
Mm-hmm.
With Boogie Nights, there's still a lot of drama with Dirk figuring out what he's going to do with his life.
Mm-hmm.
With Magnolia, you've got all these characters, and it ends on a smile. Like that very subtle smile. Like just like I don't know. The other movies are more open ended with their endings.
Yeah,
you can imagine them going in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
But there will be blood. It ends there.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what sets it apart from other Paul Thomas Anderson films is that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it was more immediate. I think the response was more immediate. People, I mean, I remember first reactions where people were like, "Whoa, that movie was kind of goes in weird places and stuff like that." But it wasn't weird. It wasn't too weird that it like turned people off completely because it managed to do okay in the box office and something like that. And 2007 was kind of a weird year. It was kind of there was a lot of dark movies that came out that year in general. So I think that
Jon Stewart made a joke like, "Does this town need
a exactly." So I think it just kind of fit in with all that. Whereas like you think about 2012 and The Master, that was the year when Argo won, and Argo was dark, but not really that. It was more of a comedy. It took a dark situation, made a comedy out of it, and then this year, I mean,
Argo comedy.
Yeah, there's a lot. Are you kidding me? There's a lot of like.
I only saw it the one time, like 2 years ago. But what was funny about it?
Argo, fuck yourself. Everything about.
Oh yeah, that all that stuff. Okay, like the
Alan Arkin.
Yeah, you're right. There's
Alan Arkin and John Goodman.
I forgot about
There's
Alan
a
Arkin
whole.
and John Goodman.
Yeah, everything.
You're right.
Everything
You're
away.
Right.
Everything away from Iran is made like a comedy, and like the concept is dressed as if it's kind of like a funny idea. Like what we're going to make a fake movie. Everything that's in Iran is kind of.
That's what
drama.
I remember.
Yeah.
The very serious, like them walking through that square or that very intense.
Do you want to do you want to fit in? Can we try and do an Oscar conversation? Or are you?
Let's take 20 minutes and just. Let's take a break though because I got to take my sweater off. I'm starting to sweat. I'm starting to sweat.
Okay, 20 minutes.
It's hot.
We'll just add it to the end of this episode. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we'll be right back, and we're gonna just wedge in an Oscar conversation.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, be back. Just a second.